so that was really great. Thank you so much. We have 20 minutes, so I'm going to try to keep this as informative and keep up with me. But if you guys have any questions at any point in time, and if I can see you, feel free to just raise your hand and quickly ask a question. Do not try to pitch, because that we can do at another point. So my name is Asra, and I'm going to talk about what different options of capital are available in the market, what are investors looking for when they're evaluating your pitches, and finally, how to reach out to investors. So how to cold email or where to find people to pitch. How many of you are pitching? Okay, awesome. So that's quite a lot of you. All right, so this is me. I am a Vice President of Programs and Partnerships at Draper University, which is an early stage pre-accelerator based out of Silicon Valley. And then I also invest in our own early stage alumni companies with Draper University Ventures. So in any given entrepreneurial ecosystem, there are essentially 8 pillars or 8 things that you can look into and also investors look into when they're evaluating your pitch. So one of the first things is accessible market. And this is extremely important when you're pitching your business or your startup. What is an accessible market? An accessible market is total addressable market for your company. So when you come up to an investor, especially for those of us who are not from the valley, those of us who are outside working in emerging or developing markets, if you come up to a VC or an investor and say, hey, I am building this company and it's going to be really big in Turkey, or I am building this company and it's going to be really big in Pakistan, that is not a big enough market for the investors. So what you need to do is paint a nice picture for them and say, hey, we're going to start in this small market in Ethiopia, or we're starting in a small market in Bangladesh. But that's our first step, and our total addressable market is this big market, and here is our plan on how to get there. Yes? Another thing that you want to explain to investors, because a lot of investors that you will find do not know about the consumer behavior, do not have access to data from these markets. Because while they might want to invest in your idea, in the field that you're in or whatever technology that you're investing in, teach them something about the market. If they ask you, well, why are the consumers going to use this product? Explain to them why. Give them consumer feedback that only is unique to your startup or unique to your region or where you're from. So that's kind of the first thing. The second thing that investors are always eager to understand is what kind of talent do you have access to, and how fast can you hire that talent, and then what can you do with that talent. So for example, if you come to us and you're like, hey, I'm raising $100,000, what are you going to use this for? I'm going to spend about 80% of that in marketing or acquiring users from Facebook. That is not what any investor wants to hear, because we don't want to give you money so you can spend it on marketing, right? So you should be saying things like, well, we're going to use this money to hire engineering talent, and then I want to know how quickly can you hire this engineering talent? What sort of access does your market have to this talent? Also, what are the laws and regulations? So for example, I was in Ethiopia earlier this year, fell in love with the company, wanted to invest, but couldn't invest because I didn't realize as an investor that to invest in a company that's registered in Ethiopia, the minimum investment is $250,000. So, I have
to ask a question because it's been killing me for years.
Go ahead.
So, exactly what you said. You said you're all looking for the technology, you don't want to invest in marketing. But if you look at the biggest companies today, there is no technology, it's all marketing. Uber, Airbnb, and et cetera. So, and that is nothing. You know, we need the money to create this silly app, but we need to get it big. So why, you know, when the idea is not great, why don't you just grab it and go, we can build the technology later, it takes half an hour. Let's do the marketing.
Right, so that's a great question. I'll repeat the question. The question is, all the great apps like Uber, Airbnb, anything, they all grew really fast with marketing. So why can I go to a VC and say, I need money for marketing? If you look at the early money that Uber or Uber, Facebook, anybody else raised, that money was not raised on marketing. That money was raised because they had a key set of individuals who were using their product, who extremely loved their product. There was a great team behind them, and what they needed the money was to scale and build features that their users were requesting. So in the beginning, what you want to do is get people through things that don't scale. And what I mean by things that don't scale, it's like there's a lot of information about it online, but things that don't scale are things like picking up your phone, talking to your consumers. It's easy to just pay somebody to use a product, but is that person going to come back and continue using it, right? Airbnb did not get money from Y Combinator because they were spending money on marketing. They got money from Y Combinator because they were hustling. They weren't ready to give up, and they were selling cereal to survive, right? So in the beginning, a lot of what investors are looking at is who you are as a person and how far can you push with that money. So you don't want to spend that money on marketing. Yes, once you raise Series A, and we'll talk about that in a minute, that's where your growth capital comes in. So investors who are investing in Series A and beyond understand, and that's why you're raising from a venture capital firm, because you want to grow really, really fast. And that growth then comes with a growth team, a marketing team, salespeople, if you're a B2B company. Does that answer your question? It's a stage. So you cannot be an early stage company with an MVP and want to spend $100,000 on marketing. That just doesn't work, right? Of course. All right, funding and finance. So one of the things that early stage investors especially want to look at is what other access to capital do you have? How well connected are you in the ecosystem? Because let's say I am to give you money, or we are to invest in you in an early stage, that 100,000 or 200,000 is not going to be enough. You're going to need more money in order to continuously grow. So how easily is that capital available to you, and how great of an access do you have, and how much have you thought this through? So make sure that you have that information readily available. Another thing that you need to talk about is regulatory framework. How long does it take you? So for example, if you're raising money, let's say in Silicon Valley, and you never thought about registering a company or Delaware C Corp, and I'm ready to write a check, and now I can't because you don't want to move your company there. So understanding regulations is very important. Similarly, reaching out to investors who have the same kind of investment thesis as the company that you're building, that's also important. Also, one of the other things that's extremely important is the cultural support. So for example, this is something that we always look at. Is this something you're going to stick with? How much is your family supporting you? How much support do you have from people around you? Or is it just something, are you a entrepreneur, that I just want to build this company and raise a lot of money and use that money to just like live a lavish lifestyle? Or are you going to hustle and really build the support system around you? And then that goes back to your support system. Who are your mentors? Who are your advisors? A very common mistake that startups make is give equity to mentors. Or somebody comes up to you and says, I will be your advisor, give me 3% of equity. That's like, think about it as, if you're older, think about it as marrying your daughter to somebody. Or if you're younger, think about dating somebody yourself, right? If someone comes up to you and says, hey, will you date me because, I don't know, XYZ reasons, you're not just going to randomly start dating people. Well, you could, but you shouldn't. So you're going to ask them some questions, right? Similarly, if you're really building a company, you're going to be building this company for the next 5 to 10 years. And your mentors or advisors that you have earlier are going to play a very important role in this. So as an entrepreneur, your mentors or your investors or your advisors need you as much as you need them. Right? Because as investors, we're not doing you a favor by investing in you. You're actually doing us a favor by taking our money and getting us 20, 30x return on that money, or 100x hopefully, right? So make sure that you ask questions. If somebody comes up to you and says, I'm going to be your mentor, ask them 3 questions. What did you do for the last company that you were a mentor for? What can you do for my company? Who are the 3 introductions that you can make for me? And 3, tell me 3 things that I don't know about my business that you do. So those are usually great questions to ask mentors and figure out if they are actually going to help you or not. And then obviously, events and things like that, but at the same time, don't waste too much time on them. Last and not the least is your education and training institutes. A lot of universities, governments now have accelerators, offers free space, etc. Utilize that to your benefit, but at the same time, be very mindful of what advice you're getting. Corporates are another great way. In most B2B cases, corporates are going to be your clients, so make sure that you understand that. Given that all investors have something called an investment thesis. So when you start raising money, you should never pitch to everybody in the room. That's a bad way to raise money. What you need to do is understand people who are investing in the same kind of company that you're building. So usually, when investors or even angel investors are investing, they have something called an investment thesis, and how they have an investment thesis is based on either verticals. So for example, they invest in healthcare, or they invest in transportation, things like that. So if you're building a transportation company, go find people who've invested in transportation companies. Other thing is a model. There's some investors who only invest in SaaS companies, software as a service companies. They only invest in business to business, like B2B companies. If you go to them with the next social media app, they're not going to look at it because that's not the vertical that they are interested in. So understanding who to talk to is one of the most important things. Can anybody tell me how long it takes to close a round, roughly? 3 to 6 months. So if you just jump into it blind, it's not Tinder. There's no like swipe left or swipe right for investors, right? You have to do the work. And the sooner you do the work, the better it is. And we'll talk about how to do the work in a bit. Then there are investors who invest in use cases. So for example, there's some people who will invest in anything that's Uber for X. So Uber for pets, Uber for grandparents, Uber for, I don't know, whatever. So find those people if you're building an Uber for X, or if you're building a use case. And then there are technology investors. There are people who invest in blockchain, in AI. Find out what that technology vertical is for you, and only reach out to those investors. And then geographic is like another big thing. So if you are from, let's say, some part of Africa, or some part of Pakistan, or India, or wherever, or Turkey, find other Turkish investors outside of here, find other high net worth individuals who are from the same geographic background, and reach out to them. So basically, when people are investing, they're, again, not doing you a favor. They have capital gains to get out of it. This is kind of how it looks like. So the first person who's always going to invest in you is yourself. So don't go up to an investor with a tissue paper or a business plan, because that's not an investor's job. You should go also look at different crowdfunding options. So for example, there are now equity crowdfunding websites like Republic, where you can actually go up, put up a percentage of your company, and raise equity, raise funding from the crowd. So look into those options. Look into incubators and accelerators. Incubators are run by governments and are usually free. Governments, universities. Accelerators would put anywhere from 50 to 150,000, take 3 to 7% of your company, and usually invest when you have an MVP or a few customers. Next comes angels. Angels are people who are putting their own money into companies and invest either before accelerators or after accelerators. Early stage funds are also smaller funds, smaller checks that you can actually reach out to when you have a very early stage product. And that's where you don't use their money for marketing. Okay, then you have bridge rounds. Because it takes 6 months to raise money, somewhere in the middle you might run out of money and would need some extra money to hold you on or take you on to the next level. At that point, you can always raise that money from your previous investors, and it's called a bridge round. When you're at Series A, where you're growing, that's where you go to institutional investors, and then again, their check sizes are a couple of $1 million, and then in the end comes your growth stage or Series B funds. Okay. So how do I find the right investor? Go on these websites. I already told you guys about it, but find them on Crunchbase, find them on AngelList. LeadIQ is a great way to find emails from people, for people, and find people who fall into the same category or same investment thesis that you're looking for. Does anybody know what this is? Lord of the Rings, thank you. But what it basically, the reason what it's doing here is that when you're reaching out to investors, you don't have to reach out to people whose title is general partner or managing director. Those are usually people who are at a much higher level and might not be doing the day-to-day meetings. People that you want to reach out to are associates, analysts, principals, angels, or people who just say investors. Those are the titles and people that you're looking at. And then, once you're fundraising, make a list. You should have an A list, which is the best possible matches that you could find of investors. These are investors who have the same investment thesis or investment thesis that best matches what you're building. These are the investors who can add the most value, have the most corporate or consumer connections for you. These are the investors who can serve you the best if you put them on your board. And your B list are people who just have money, so they're not bad people, but they're not ideal. So if nothing in the A list works, then kind of go to the B list. Do your own research. This is extremely important. The number of times that we get emails from people. So any guesses on how many emails on average angel investors or early stage investors get? Per day? 11? I would be happy on the day that I get 11. About like 250 to 300 emails. And just like all of you, most of these emails are read while we're doing other things, right? So I never just sit down to read emails. I read emails while I'm walking, so I'm distracted as it is. So when you're reaching out to people, make sure that you've done research. One of our companies reached out to an investor, Jason Calacanis, and it was actually a Turkish company. They do customized cakes. And they made a cake for Jason that had a picture of his dog. The dog had only died like 6 months ago. So do your research before you reach out to investors, because those can be sticky situations. And then always the people who are on your A-list, follow them, right? So for example, somebody said that there's a great housing crisis in Silicon Valley. Another investor came in and said, if you're building something around it, email me. So now, if you're building something that solves the housing crisis or is something that works on remote work, remote anything, Ryan would be a great person to reach out to, and at the same time, you can actually use a reference to this particular tweet when you're reaching out to Ryan, right? So do your homework before that. When you're building your A-list and B-list, have a column that says comments, and in those comments, add your homework, add your research. So when you're reaching out to them, it doesn't sound like you didn't do much. And referrals are always great. If somebody can refer you, that's awesome. In your introduction emails, this is actually picked directly from Michael Siebel at Y Combinator. Clearly explain what you do, sell on why they should be excited, and then just go for the ask right away. I'm not going to read this email, but this is a great example of that. Keep it very short, very concise. Because I've already opened your email, so I'm interested in finding out what you want. Don't send me an email that says, hey, what do you think about my company? I don't think about companies. Tell me what you want me to think about, right? Or, hey, can you give me some feedback? No, I'm not going to give you feedback. But if you ask me, here, I am working on this product. I saw that your experience matches this. Can you answer 2 questions for me? That's a yes or a no question, right? And nobody's an asshole that they're going to say, no, I don't want to answer your questions, right? Also, emails like, will you be my mentor? No. Can I send you an email every 2 months with 1 question and 1 update? Yes, right? So things like that, think it through, because it's a great way to actually get replies to your emails. Common mistakes, really long texts, and still not sure what you want. When I get paragraphs after paragraphs of email, like, great company, don't send paragraphs. Send a pitch deck or a demo if you want, but don't send paragraphs in your email with like no information. If I say yes, you send me a link for a calendar invite, and this happens a lot. I said, yes, I will meet you at 2 p.m., and a reply I get is, here is a link to my Calendly. No, I already told you I'm available at 2 p.m. You should send the calendar invite right there. Clearly ask for what you want and don't suck up. If your email says, this is what I want, it's much easier to answer versus, hey, loved your blue jacket and your silver shoes, and now here's what I'm building, and 5 lines in, I'm like, I don't know what you want, right? So say it right away, but you can tell me you like my jacket too. And then don't spend too much time on warm introductions. Sometimes it takes longer to try to reach out to somebody who can make an introduction versus just reaching out to people. So do it super fast. And last, making me do the work. I already kind of went over this, but please, when you reach out to people, mentors, investors, don't make them do the work. It should be an easy yes or no. I am interested. Here are some answers. Here is what you can do. A great example is one of our students reached out to a partner at DFJ, and he said, he's from India, and he said, hi, I want you to be my mentor. And she said, no, I don't have time to be your mentor. He sent her another email. He's like, how about every 2 months I send you 1 email? Will you reply to 1 question? And she said, yes, fine, I'll do that. For 2 years, every 2 months, he sent her 1 email with 1 question and an update from the previous question. Before she knew it, she was not only his mentor, she also ended up paying for his trip to San Francisco and invested in his company. So that's a great way to find mentors. And then we don't have time to ask me anything, but if you want to, my email was somewhere in the beginning. Let's see. Don't send me okay, this is going to take a while. Well, it's asra@draperuniversity.com. So if you want to reach out to me, there you go. It's asra@draperuniversity.com. All right? Thank you.
Thank you.